With tariffs on the rise under Trump, China exports are finding new markets.
We are about to be hit by a tsunami of Chinese goods. When Trump does impose tariffs on Chinese exports, then the goods that were originally supposed to go to the US will have to find new markets.
Some welcome that. Others don't.
Apakah kita ini dipaksa untuk berhenti bekerja? Betul, teman-teman?
I think it's crazy. In China, they do the factory 24 hours. They use AI. Of course, we cannot compete.
Southeast Asian economies are being squeezed by China exports on the one hand and United States tariffs on the other.
Foreign leaders have stolen our jobs. Foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories. They do it to us and we do it to them.
It will impact Malaysia solar panel manufacturing industry a lot. It might kill off the whole industry.
Mankind as a whole really need to realize the real motivation of the United States and the wrongfulness of using tariff as an instrument of political power against other countries.
With pressure from both the world superpowers, how will ASEAN manage?
ASEAN's got a plan B in place. We're now swimming against the tide, but we've got to keep swimming.
Things are not looking good for one of Indonesia's largest textile companies, Shritex. Black armbands worn by employees and management alike send a desperate plea: save Shritex.
Maka kita akan melawan kepada mereka yang memaksa kita untuk berhenti bekerja di Shritex ini. Kita hanya ingin terus bekerja, teman-teman. Betul.
At one point, Shritex was the largest textile company in Indonesia, employing 50,000 people directly and indirectly, according to Indonesian media. In 2020, the firm did nearly $1.3 billion in sales and posted a net profit of $85 million. 4 years later, its fortunes have turned. What happened?
Shritex is the biggest supplier for fabric in Indonesian market. When the market flooding by China fabric, of course, it will also impact to Shritex. Yeah. So the problem in Shritex is almost the same with another company, because the market is flooded by China fabric.
Shritex is not the only Indonesian textile company in crisis. According to data from the Indonesian Filament Fiber and Yarn Producers Association, from 2023 to the end of 2024, 60 textile companies closed, and an estimated 250,000 workers were laid off.
Banyak sekali pabrik-pabrik yang pilot. Pengusahanya tidak bisa berbuat apa-apa. Buruhnya merana sengsara, tidak dapat pesangon apa-apa. PHK, anak istrinya menganggur semua di rumah, tidak dapat makan apa-apa.
The total workers that impact, we count about 800,000. 250,000 workers they lay off, and the rest is they stay at home. Some people they cut the work hours. Some company they cut the day they work. Yeah. It became to political issue. Yeah. Many of our parliament talk about this thing. Yeah. Also because the impact is not only in textile sector. Yeah. The impact in social and other sector also like logistic, also like housing and many sectors they impact this.
The Indonesian textile industry is facing intense competition from China in two ways. First, in the domestic market.
The price is very cheap. Yeah. China can sell with lowest price, I think because the dumping. We can look in US, in Europe, in Vietnam, in India. Yeah. Many China product, they impose the anti-dumping duty for the China product. Yeah. So I think all over the world is the same problem with the China dumping.
Secondly, Indonesia's textile exports are also being challenged.
We know that some brands like Mango, Zara, Nike, Adidas, H&M also, yeah, they have to cut the production in Indonesia because they have also to compete with China product in US and also in Europe. Yeah.
Inside China's high-tech textile factories, new technologies are helping companies achieve greater efficiencies. This company's digital upgrades enable over 400 smart high-speed water jet looms to operate automatically around the clock. Any malfunctions can be quickly detected and resolved by humans using computer code instructions. No mechanical tools or human hands are needed.
我们给产线安装了数字大脑，生产效率提高了30%，损耗降低了10%。通过这些技术创新，今年以来我们的销售额突破了1亿元。
According to Chinese government data, China's textile and garment exports hit $293.6 billion in 2023, making it the world's largest garment exporter.
今年以来，我们本地660户服装加工企业通过设备改造和技术创新后，销售额已突破22亿元。
These technological innovations are now being pushed out across the country.
中国面临的一个非常重要的经济增长的动能呢，就是在劳动力层面上的相对的短缺，所以我们会看到很多这个制造业的工厂里面都出现了黑灯工厂和机器人制造的这种新兴的现象，就是比如说我去过参观过好多家工厂，比如说制造袜子的，制造我们这个衣服的，它可能一个工厂里面真正的真人在工作的只有几个人，但他们却实现了过去几千人甚至上万人能够出现的产能这个工厂它是黑灯工厂，不需要灯的。
I think it's crazy. In China, they do the factory 24 hours. They use the AI. They have a black factory, and of course we cannot compete. But we have to try. We have to try.
Textiles aren't the only sector Indonesia worries about. As Trump imposes tariffs on China, policymakers are bracing for more headwinds.
You wrote in an article, and I'd like to quote you. You said, Southeast Asia is about to be hit by a tsunami of cheap Chinese goods flooding its markets. Can you explain?
I think we are about to be hit by a tsunami of Chinese goods for various reasons. One is the slowdown in China itself, so domestic demand is slowed down. But more importantly, when Trump does impose tariffs on Chinese exports, then the goods that were originally supposed to go to the US will have to find a new markets. And the obvious markets are in this part of the world. So we are afraid that this is going to increase.
Whether in simple toys, homeware, party accessories, or in the high-tech arena of batteries, solar panels, or electric vehicles, China leads in all these industries and more.
中国是具有全产业链的国家， 按照联合国产业门类的分类，39门大的工业体系、151门中等工业体系和525门小的工业体系，在世界上唯一一个国家全部具有。这个国家叫中华人民共和国。所以我形象地说，中国可以生产从火柴到火箭，从卫星到卫星，从螺母到航母，从水电站到国际空间站，几乎所有的东西。中国一旦生产什么就变成白菜价格。
At the beginning of 2025, it was reported that China's exports rose 10% in 2024 to hit a record high of over $3 trillion. China's trade surplus with the world, which is the amount its exports exceed its imports, reached almost $1 trillion. A New York Times article noted that, when adjusted for inflation, China's trade surplus last year far exceeded any in the world in the past century, even those of export powerhouses like Germany, Japan, or the United States. Chinese factories are dominating global manufacturing on a scale not experienced by any country since the United States after World War II.
China has been accused of overcapacity, which I believe is a wrong term. I would say the better term is a great efficiency of the Chinese production, especially in the manufacturing area. Why? Because China has built up probably the best and the most extensive interconnectivity, highways, railways, seaports, you name it. Secondly, China has built up the most efficient and the most powerful electricity generation and transmission network. And thirdly, I think, which is rarely understood or analyzed by Western countries, is that the Chinese nation, in terms of the quality and the discipline of the workforce, is probably the most powerful workforce in the world. People in China prefer to work long hours. They want to work. They sometimes work more than one job. For many people in China, most of the people I know of have more than one job because they want to work, they want to perform, they want to make more money for their family. So the Chinese productivity and the efficiency are not because of what some Western countries accuse China of, for example, dumping goods to other countries, etc. It is because of the very unique and special combination of factors now available in China. The United States of America, countries like Great Britain, for example, they deliberately choose to focus on finance rather than manufacturing industries, because they thought manufacturing industry is dirty, is pollutive, is labor intensive, etc., etc. They came up with all excuses to get rid of their own manufacturing industries. China made the right decision to focus on manufacturing jobs to the extent that we believe without manufacturing, you really cannot achieve sustainable wealth for the nation.
It wasn't very long ago when Malaysia celebrated the opening of Jinko Solar, one of China's leading solar manufacturers, and also one of the world's largest. In 2015, Jinko Solar spent $800 million to build a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in Penang. It created over 1,000 jobs and had significant multipliers for the local economy.
We invested in the country, and it's one of the largest private investment from China to one of the Belt and Road regions. The Malaysia factory that we have in Penang is one of the largest in this region.
Jinko shut down its Malaysia plant in 2024, and it isn't the only one scaling back. China's solar companies, Risen Energy and Longi Green Energy Technology Company, also shut large parts of its operations.
It's pretty bad. I think some of the companies, they just started to expand their Southeast Asia facilities, including Malaysia, which to actually capture US market. Suddenly, it was hit, I think, in a short notice that the exemptions of tariff no longer available for Malaysia. So it will impact Malaysia solar panel manufacturing industry a lot. It might kill off the whole industry.
To understand how Malaysians are being impacted by American policies, we have to wind the clock back to the early 2000s. The US was once a stronghold of solar module manufacturing, accounting for around a quarter of global solar module shipments in the early 2000s. But that all changed around 2010 when Chinese manufacturers gained comparative advantage. Dozens of US solar factories shut down. The Biden administration tried to rebuild the US solar industry with generous subsidies from the Inflation Reduction Act, which channeled $430 billion to clean energy industries. In November 2024, the same administration announced tariffs on solar imports from Southeast Asia of up to 271%, citing reasons of anti-dumping and anti-subsidy. These tariffs expanded further under the Trump administration. Solar manufacturers in Southeast Asia are almost all from China, as Chinese companies possess unrivaled technological advantage.
Now, some US politicians are saying that Chinese companies are using Malaysia as a cover to dump cheap solar panels in the US. What's your view on that?
I think it's quite political, and there has been always this accuse since the beginning. The actual value that Malaysia should bring to add value into this manufacturing process is, the example, the silicon wafer is coming from China. Then you need to process it to become a final solar panel. There are a lot of semiconductor process need to apply into making the wafer into the cell, and then making into assembly and test assembly into working solar panel. So there are still many processes involved that Malaysia workforce can add value. I don't think it's fair to say that product is still made in China, because a lot of manufacturing process, a lot of test assembly manufacturing process, source of material already being localized.
These factory closures aren't just happening in Malaysia. Chinese solar manufacturers also announced shutdowns of their plants in Vietnam and Thailand.
Tariffs on solar panels started before Trump, and really a tragic story in several ways. One, the technology actually came from America. Chinese have learned to do it cheaper and pretty high quality. And that actually has been the formula of why the world since the end of the Cold War has gone through a boom of consumer goods. America inventing, China learning how to produce, manufacture with other Asian countries cheaper. That's benefited so many people. And solar panels, of all things facing climate change, don't you think the world would benefit from cheaper but good solar panels? So it's a tragedy of both consumerism and for the climate.
Experts point out that while some industries are worried that China exports are putting them out of work, US tariffs have an even more detrimental impact.
Well, people around the world are crunching numbers right now after President Donald Trump unveiled a range of tariffs on imports into the U.S.
Dominating the list are many from the Indo-Pacific. China faces a 34% reciprocal rate. Now, this is on top of an existing 20% tariff, taking the total to 54%.
In Southeast Asia, Cambodia tops at 49%, followed by lower rates for Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines.
While some exemptions partially shield semiconductors, which is Malaysia's largest export category to the United States, nevertheless, these new tariffs will still adversely impact many of our Malaysian industries, including textiles, furniture, rubber, and plastics.
Trump sees my deficit's huge, therefore, to make America great again, I've got to bring that number down. This actually is quite false thinking. But we need to assuage this by having China and other ASEAN countries who have a surplus America start to figure out, how do I buy enough American goods? And they've been doing it for some time, but frankly, to get Boeing planes, that's like a 3-year wait. Armaments depends on whether you're allowed to buy armaments. What else does America have to sell? And that's where I think fundamentally America, the CEOs have to look themselves in the face. How much have they really hollowed out the industrial capacity of America?
Rayong, Thailand is known as the Detroit of Asia. Over the last 40 years, Japanese investors have poured over $1 billion into the area, building a formidable car export sector driven by Japanese auto brands, and transforming Thailand from this to this over the course of 4 decades. Thailand became Southeast Asia's largest car production hub, and its auto industry was a key driver, elevating its economy to middle-income status. But that once formidable engine of growth is now under threat. In 2024, a number of news headlines shows how much the sector is in trouble. Associate Professor Kriangkrai Techakanon has been studying the Thai auto industry for more than 24 years.
In 2012, in Thailand, used to produce 2.4 million, but last year just 1.4 million.
That's a difference of about 1 million cars, so it must have a lot of impact on all the different car makers.
Sure. Last year, Subaru, Suzuki decided to withdraw from Thailand, and this year Nissan will close 1 factory.
Thailand's automotive production contracted nearly 30% in 2024. There are about 1 million people employed either directly or indirectly in the sector, making cars for markets far and wide, even reaching Brazil. So, what happened?
The Thai auto industry export a lot since 2004, and the export is throughout several regions in the world, like including the big market is Australia, because we export a lot of pickup trucks there, and then in Asia, in Africa, and also some portion to North and South America. The entrance of the BYD and other Chinese EV makers to the world market, it has become adopted by several countries. So those countries are also the destination of Thai export. So once those demands were fulfilled by the new type of vehicle, the demand for the Thai export become smaller.
Chinese car makers have been accused of overcapacity.
Take the electric vehicle sector. It is a crucial industry for the clean economy with a huge potential in Europe. But global markets are now flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars.
Thai and Japanese automakers aren't the only ones feeling the pressure. China's wave of EV exports is being blamed for factory closures in Europe and for hurting the profitability of US car makers. China disagrees with these views.
Globally, green capacity is not excessive, but in dire scarcity. The problem now is not overcapacity, but over-anxiety.
Here in Thailand, as some Japanese car factories shut, new ones from China have opened.
In business tonight, Chinese automaker BYD has opened its first electric vehicle plant in Thailand as part of the company's push to expand its reach into Southeast Asian markets. The $490 million plant has a capacity to build 150,000 vehicles a year, with key components such as batteries to be assembled locally.
BYD's new plant is in Rayong, Thailand's car-making capital, that was built with the help of Japanese official development assistance over 4 decades. The BYD plant has a size of almost 132 football fields. Cars made here are for export as well as for the Thai market.
未来呢，我们将在泰国推出更多的纯电动车型，还会引入插电混动、插电混合动力车型，并实现 本地化的生产，我们期待为泰国带来先进的新能源汽车技术，推动泰国汽车产业链的转型升级，助力泰国制造风靡东南亚，走向全世界。
BYD said their factory created 10,000 jobs in Thailand. Thailand hopes to build on their existing auto industry know-how and become an EV manufacturing hub. This factory is an important boost to those national goals.
เชื่อมั่นว่าโรงงานแห่งนี้จะเป็นก้าวแรกของ BYD ในการผลิตรถยนต์พลังงานใหม่ที่ประเทศไทยและเป็นก้าวสำคัญของการเป็นศูนย์กลางการผลิตยานยนต์แห่งอนาคตเพื่อส่งออกไปตลาดอาเซียนและประเทศต่างๆตอบสนองนโยบายของรัฐบาลในการเดินหน้าเศรษฐกิจไทยไปพร้อมกับการนำพาประเทศไปสู่สังคมคาร์บอนต่ำ
Some Japanese car factories have shut down, while some Chinese car companies have opened up. Do these new investments bring enough jobs to make up for the job losses that has occurred?
When the EV makers like BYD and others that they want to expand and they operate in Thailand, the number of jobs that will be created, I think it will not cover because of 2 reasons. The first is they are just starting their production. It has not yet reached its full scale. So the number of employment will not be high at this stage. And the second is about that technology. The operation would be more automation. It requires less parts, so it requires less coordination with the local supplier. Because of this, I think the number of employment that will be created may not be sufficient with the job loss.
The nature of the EV manufacturing process is just more robotics, less people, less parts and processes. So there'll never be a one-for-one in terms of job creation.
Over 1,700 local small-medium enterprises supply the Japanese automakers in Thailand. Many are thinking hard about reinventing their businesses to remain relevant.
The car is no longer the car that we used to drive. It becomes electronics device and also some entertainment. My son just bought a EV, BYD, and that's the first time I learned how the new generation they are thinking, how they view the car. This completely changed, and now it's like everyone is struggling how to survive. They need to change their strategy in product mix and investment strategy. But as I think everyone understands this, like the supply chain of the internal combustion engine, like auto vehicles, it cannot change overnight. So it takes time.
And in the meantime, this transition is painful.
Yes, no pain, no gain.
In a different part of Southeast Asia, China's massive EV sector is facilitating job creation on a grand scale. All this used to be forest about a decade ago. Now Sulawesi is the world's top production center for nickel. That is the critical ore that goes into the making of batteries in these Chinese EVs. Here, in this remote part of Indonesia, Chinese companies dominate.
越来越多的矿业公司关注到我们的镍的这块的一个矿业和汲取。
Local employment has boomed to support growing nickel mining operations. In just one industrial park, Morowali, 200,000 jobs have been created. According to a report from American think tank Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, the output of the workers in Indonesia supply 9 factories, accounting for over 40% of the global production of EVs. This puts Indonesia at the center of new global supply chains supporting renewable energy transition. Growing Chinese investments in Indonesia's nickel sector bring their own set of problems. There's been some high-profile workplace accidents and deaths. Deforestation is also a perennial concern.
Do you think that the benefits of the nickel industry outweighs the costs of the environmental degradation brought by that industry?
I think it's very important questions, yeah. I think not many people understand how the mechanism of this mining activity in Indonesia, yeah. So if they want to use the forest or they want to mine the area inside the forest, they have to get a permit from the government. That's first, yeah. The second one, once they are doing this mining and it's already completed, they need to do the reclamation. And this is very important. So not many, I would say, this NGO, yeah, the environmentalist is putting right and objective criticism, yeah, to the government.
So by reclamation, you mean reforestation, right?
Yes, yes.
The Indonesian economy makes about $34 billion a year from the export of nickel products, the vast majority of which go to China. Chinese battery and EV companies have also announced plans to invest billions in Indonesia, just like they had in Thailand. Indonesia has its trade struggles with China, but these must be viewed alongside an accompanying windfall of inbound Chinese investment.
We have discussed trade friction with China leading to job losses, and we've also discussed China investment into Indonesia creating jobs. Which of the two is larger?
No, I think it's very difficult, yeah, to say, okay, this one is larger than the others. Yeah. Of course, we want to have an equal partnership, mutually beneficial, and respect to each other, yeah. Which means that I think you need to also put in place, yeah, the international regulation, yeah, regarding this area, yeah. We are open to any investment, you know. We are open to any trading partner, but I guess, you know, there are rules that we have in Indonesia. There are rules that we adopted based on the international consensus, like the WTO. Of course, we have to follow on that, yeah. So if there is a unfair trade, yeah, implemented by some countries, yeah, and it's create a problem, job losses in Indonesia, of course we have to take action. But the question is, if this is due to competitiveness issue, then, you know, we need to do the improvement inside.
China is very eager to promote FDI into other countries, and traditionally, for many years in a row, ASEAN countries have always attracted the largest amount of Chinese overseas investment for a variety of reasons. Proximity is one reason, and we have free trade agreement between us, and we have a lot of historical pleasant relations between and among us, you name it. So I think in the coming decades, China will be a very important trading partner and also provider of capital and also provider of new technologies, technological know-how, and expertise. But on the other hand, between any two major economic blocs, for example, China versus ASEAN, there are always some unpleasant experiences or failures, for example, or lack of success, disappointments, etc. These are natural. Don't be surprised if they happen, but the wisdom is always try your best to come up with ways to overcome these negative things and focus on the megatrend, focus on the positive upside, and the positive upside between China and ASEAN is, using a traditional Chinese term, unlimited. There is no limit to the upside of China-ASEAN cooperation.
Economies in ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, are being squeezed. On the one hand, rising China exports are putting pressure on some domestic producers. On the other hand, tariffs from the United States have caused factories to shutter.
China, because its domestic economy isn't growing as fast as it used to, it will have to export. And it's also starting to invest in our region. So the relationship with China is getting thicker, actually more complex.
Chinese customs data showed that China's largest export market in 2023 is ASEAN, with an annual value reaching $523.7 billion. Aided by apps like Lazada, which is owned by Alibaba, and Chinese e-commerce giants like TEMU and SHEIN, Southeast Asia has seen an increase in imports of all sorts of low-cost Chinese-made goods which compete with local manufacturers. Vietnam suspended the operations of TEMU in December 2024. Thailand, meanwhile, has identified 58 products, including steel and furniture, as targets for anti-circumvention duties. The government has also proposed imposing tariffs on Chinese steel. To manage low-cost imports and protect local manufacturers, Thailand also introduced a 7% value-added tax on imported goods below $40. This move led to a 20% reduction in imports in this category, mostly from China. Malaysia is also strengthening its anti-dumping legislation.
China is obviously an export powerhouse. We have been beneficiaries of that in the sense that the range of products that Malaysian consumers can buy has been growing. But I think the speed or the volumes that we have been seeing over the past couple of years has been increasing at a very significant rate. And I think this is attributable to a couple of new factors that were not present before. I think firstly, we have to acknowledge that there has been a slowdown in the Chinese economy and also Chinese consumer spending. Secondly, I think there has also been a challenge of overcapacity among Chinese manufacturers because of not just the slowing Chinese economy, but because of tariffs that has been imposed on them, mostly by the United States. So as a result of these factors, we do see that overcapacity being exported to parts of Southeast Asia, including Malaysia.
ASEAN's largest economy, Indonesia, has also banned e-commerce firm TEMU over fears its small enterprises could be destroyed. The Indonesian government has said it was looking at imposing duties of up to 200% on some Chinese imports.
E-commerce is the megatrend. It will really change and shape and reshape the way commerce will be done in different parts of the world. There will be pains. Many of the smaller and the medium-sized vendors may be under a lot of pressure. Many people may lose their jobs. Many factories may need to be reoriented, for example. All these are costs. that will be incurred whenever you have a huge revolution or technological breakthrough. And for the ASEAN countries, rather than closing the door to highly efficient e-commerce platforms or applications, maybe the better way is to understand the change in doing business, in how commerce is being done, and embrace those platforms and applications that you may eventually choose with the purpose of increasing efficiency and productivity, lowering the price for the consumers, and eventually making living standards more affordable and quality of life more prevailable for as many people as possible. I don't think it is worthwhile to pick a fight with the emerging technologies.
We need to work together with ASEAN to have a dialogue or have an engagement with China to say that, we are worried about this influx of goods and that we should discuss it openly to see what are the solutions that we need to have. I mean, I remember going through this when I was Minister of Trade. In the same issue we faced with the China-ASEAN free trade area, and the conclusion was, okay, we need to increase investments of China here to produce here. So I still think that's a valid argument, but now we have we should come together as ASEAN. And I think the world has changed since 15 years ago. There's now e-commerce, there's a lot more other opportunities that can actually help SMEs to be part of the ongoing trade and investments that are going on between ASEAN and China. But I do think we as ASEAN need to come together to, it's better for us to do that, to face China.
It is not just in Southeast Asia where there are concerns around Chinese exports. Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and India have all imposed anti-dumping measures on some Chinese exports. The United States of America is the biggest export market for ASEAN economies. In 2024, the US overtook China as Southeast Asia's largest export market. But access to that market is under threat in the current Trump administration.
How can Indonesia deal with an increasingly protectionist USA?
I would say we have a solid plan. I cannot tell you, but I think I'm quite confident we have a solid plan, yeah.
We won't go into your solid plans, but can you tell us a bit more about how Indonesia is trying to diversify its trade partners and deepen its trade relationships with other countries?
We are now have a ongoing discussion with EU on the comprehensive economic partnership. So I think this is a very important part of our strategy to do a trade diversification, especially with the Europeans.
President Trump is a businessman. He likes making deals. He likes discussing deals. I think Malaysia and ASEAN has to take a more proactive approach. And what does this mean? I think this would entail Malaysia putting certain value propositions or preparing certain value propositions that we can put forth to the Trump administration. So, for example, to show that Malaysia can be a good player in the critical mineral supply chain, of which there are sources in Malaysia that can be procured. We already have a critical minerals processing plant in Lynas. We should be, I think, open to more investments in this area.
China placed export restrictions on rare earth elements on the 4th of April 2025 as part of its response to US tariffs. 7 categories of rare earths were placed on an export control list. These are crucial elements needed for defense and technology. Several countries in ASEAN have large rare earth deposits and have repeatedly said that they are open to investments from all countries in this space.
The commitment from Indonesia is that we want our product to be freely sold to any countries.
With so much pressure from both the world's superpowers, should Southeast Asia be optimistic about economic growth in 2025?
I believe we are quite resilient in sort of navigating the headwinds that are, a lot of it is external. We need to focus, if we can focus on our domestic homework, and we have the domestic market as a base for our growth, and if we can use our domestic resources to increase the efficiency and competitiveness of Indonesia and create jobs, I think we will still be able to grow at 5%.
I'm cautiously optimistic about Malaysia and also ASEAN's growth trajectory in the next 5 to 10 years. I think the China Plus One strategy will continue regardless of what happens in the United States. And in fact, I would say that what is happening in the United States may give even more reason for global companies to want to invest in ASEAN because of our stability, because of our growing domestic markets, because of our increasing incomes per capita, and also the fact that we are seen as a region that is friendly towards all parties. That's why the World Bank and the IMF has projected that ASEAN as a whole would probably grow faster than even China over the next 3 years.
ASEAN's got a plan B in place. They've got to integrate more deeply with each other, not take on Trumpian views. They've got to work with willing partners who see the same thing, whether in Asia or with the EU, who are facing certain dilemmas as well. So ASEAN has swum with the tide. When globalization was strong post-Cold War, ASEAN really moved fast. We're now swimming against the tide, but we've got to keep swimming.